It is absolutely a pleasure to be here. I have to tell you, I am such a fan of what the people in this room do every day. What you do matters, and what you do gives hope and inspiration and courage, and it's just extraordinary. And so if people don't tell you thank you enough, let me tell you thank you now. Thank you for the lives you changed through your actions, but thank you for the lives that you changed just through your existence, right? As being a beacon that shows people what's possible. Thank you to Carol and to Kathleen for the work that you all do at Purpose Built is just absolutely extraordinary. Now, I have to tell you, you got to hear Warren Buffett yesterday. You got to hear one of my personal heroes, Larry James, yesterday. It's a tough act to follow. If you haven't really had the opportunity to spend much time with Larry James or to see the work that he does, please do. He's so humble about what he does, and I listened to his presentation yesterday and thought it was amazing, but having seen the things that he does firsthand and the lives that City Square is changing firsthand, it is even more extraordinary than what he shared yesterday. So when you come visit Dallas, make sure you leave enough time to see the work they're doing at City Square, because I promise you, you will not be disappointed. Now, I also have to recognize my Chief of Staff, Chris Dowdy, who's here somewhere in the back. You know, it's good to see you, Chris. Why don't you stand up so everybody can be impressed, right? Let's give him a hand. In the Quinn Nation, we believe in celebrating all of us because none of us are more important than any of us. So why don't we get started? We're going to talk today about building a city for our nation. Nation building with Paul Quinn College. Now, we call ourselves the Quinn Nation, and we do that, and we started doing that back when we were down to about 150 students. And I recognized that it was a bit audacious to call yourself a nation when you don't even qualify as a club, right? But we never subscribed to the things that others subscribe to. We didn't subscribe to their beliefs. We don't think that you have to be 15,000 to be formidable. We come from the tree of Gideon's army. I will take my 150 committed and passionate souls against your 15,000 ambivalent souls, and we will win every day and twice on Sunday. That's what we believe, and that's how we live our lives. Now, I grew up in Chicago, and if you grew up in Chicago, you idolize big things, right? We are a big city in Chicago, and one of the people that I always was a big fan of was the city planner, the person who planned Chicago, Daniel Burnham. And he had this great quote, which is, "Make no little plans. They have no magic to stir men's blood. Make big plans, aim high in hope and work." That's what we are doing at Paul Quinn College, and that's what I encourage each of us to continue to do day in and day out. Now, another quote I love is by Buckminster Fuller, who says, "To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete." Now, you all know that. That's what you do every day. But in places where people don't do those things, I just don't understand how you're supposed to change things by doing the same old thing. It doesn't work that way. So we're going to change some things and talk about how to do that. Now, I am a college president, and I'm also a professor, which means that I give homework. So I'm giving you some homework right now. We are working on a vision statement at Paul Quinn College, and we need your help. So this is the draft of the vision statement. I want you to take a picture of it, listen to it, understand it, and we're going to go through the presentation, and at the end of my presentation, we're coming back to the vision statement, and I want you all to help us come up with just the right words. Can we do that? We come from the black church tradition and HBCUs. In black church tradition, it is a call and response tradition. Okay, you all acted like I said I was going to pass the hat. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, can we agree to help us with the vision at the end of the presentation? Yeah. Much, much better. Let the church say amen. All right, so our vision statement, the draft of it is to eliminate, this is our goal. This is what we strive to do. This is why we are here. To eliminate urban poverty by establishing a network of urban work colleges that through the power of, and this is where it gets a little fuzzy, Work, careers, employment, something to do with jobs and giving people a real sense of purpose through their employment. Will provide whole communities with entrepreneurial visionaries and transformative leaders. So that's where we're going. I'm counting on you to help us get all the way there, okay? We'll grade you at the end. So welcome to the Quinnite Nation. We exist because we understand that many places do not, but I suspect you do. That there are roses that grow from concrete. Okay, this is one of our students. Her name is Jasmine Norman. She was salutatorian of her high school, Douglas High School in Memphis, Tennessee. Douglas High School is not one of those high schools that you will read about because it's typically considered to be an underperforming school. But I actually challenge us to rethink what we consider to be high performing. Because if you are a rose that grows out of concrete, you grew under the most difficult of circumstances. You grew under the most harsh of conditions. So maybe you are a rose that should be celebrated, studied, and loved, and not scorned. So I start with this picture because I want you to understand one thing about Paul Quinn College. We live for the roses that grow out of concrete. That's what we do, it's what we believe, and I'm proud to be president of a school that does these things. And I love Jasmine Norman because she gives me hope. So this is our history. We are an African Methodist Episcopal school. We were founded in 1872 in a church in Austin, Texas. We stayed in Austin, Texas for 5 years, and we moved to Waco. We were in Waco from 1877 till 1990. It was in Waco where we went from being the connectional school to the Waco College to Paul Quinn College, named after Bishop William Paul Quinn, who was a bishop in the AME Church. In 1990, the school moved to Dallas, Texas, on the campus of Bishop College, which was another historically black college that met an unfortunate demise, but it's still an institution that we celebrate because it did great things with the time that it existed. In 2006, 2007, we were a struggling institution on the verge of closing. The Boston Consulting Group released a study which said if we did not make tremendous changes, then in the next 12 to 18 months that we would go under. Now, let me just tell you a little brief aside when you are thinking about jobs. When people call you and offer you a job that you didn't apply for, be skeptical, right? Now, they're either offering you the job because you're amazing. And if you believe that, you're not that amazing, okay? All right? You are an egotistical fool, all right? But the other thing may be, it may be a job no one else wants. Because this isn't the stuff they told me when they called me up, right? They just said, hey, how would you like to be president of Paul Quinn College? I said, no, thank you. We're buying an NBA franchise. I'm moving to Memphis. I'm going to get to be president of the team. I don't know what you're going to pay me, but they're going to pay me more, okay? And the bishop said, well, just think about it. So I called him back and said, I'll be the interim president. I'll give you 90 days while we negotiate with David Stern, and it's turned into 11 years. So there's a couple things that we now know for sure. One, I am the world's worst interim college president, okay? Number two, I think the bishop prayed against my team, okay? You know, just don't know who to trust these days, all right? So we were an open enrollment institution. If you could breathe, you could attend our school for the vast majority of its history. We were a place for students from under-resourced communities who didn't really have very many options for college to attend. Our alums typically gravitated towards teaching, municipal work, and ministry. We had a small endowment and great financial struggles. That is how you wind up, after 135 years of existence, being in a place where you are on the verge of having to close your doors. It's not because people are terrible. It's not because people don't care. It's not because people aren't talented in their own right. It's because year after year of being inadequately funded erodes your dreams. It erodes your possibilities. It infects your soul. And struggle was never meant to be a permanent state. Struggle is a transitional state. It is meant to go through. You struggle through something, you come out the other end. If you struggle for 135 years, I promise you more than once in your lifetime, people will look at you and say, I don't think you can make it. That's where we were. But this is our mission. And there are lots of other things. We've got all the academic gobbledygook that you would expect. But the part that applies the most here is that we prepare our students to be servant leaders and agents of change in the global marketplace. That means that we have a higher calling, a higher purpose. It can never just be about a classroom experience at Paul Quinn College. So when I became president in 2007, I realized that maybe our greatest strength was found in those last few lines of our mission statement. And this is what we did with it. We realized that our nation has a poverty problem, and maybe there's a role for us to play there. More than 45 million Americans live in poverty. The majority of public school students today in our K through 12 school systems are living under free and reduced lunch conditions. That means that their families are in such fragile state economically that the children are at risk of not having food if they aren't fed at school. Think about what that means for a moment. Think about what that level of insecurity and poverty would do to you. Think of the level of trauma and stress that we are asking these children to live under. Now today, 54% of the students that come to college are Pell Grant eligible, which is the modern day equivalent, or the higher ed equivalent, of living free and reduced lunches. At Paul Quinn College, on any given year, our numbers are anywhere between 85% and 90% of our students are Pell Grant eligible. And of those students, 70% of them get zero expected family contributions, which means their families can't even help them buy a book. So think about that as you go forward. But our city, Dallas, also has a poverty problem. And I know that we like to think of Dallas as home of J.R. Ewing and the Cowboys and Jerry's World, and I have news for you. If you live in some parts of the city, that is absolutely true. If you live in other parts of the city, that is the biggest lie that has ever been told. 25% of all residents in Dallas live in poverty. A third of our children in Dallas live in poverty. 30% of our children live in poverty. Dallas is actually a tale of two cities. If you live, and I apologize if it's not great quality on the screen, but let me make this really easy for you. The light-colored spaces are where all the white people live. The dark-colored spaces are all where the blacks and the Hispanics live. You will notice that we have a little bit of a Mason-Dixon line thing going on here. North of downtown, you have affluent neighborhoods, right? And there's one other thing, the little red circles and areas, that's where the highest levels of concentrated poverty exist. North, little poverty, lots of Anglo people. South, lots of poverty, and where the majority of blacks and Hispanics live. Now, in case you're wondering where Paul Quinn College is, because maybe I didn't tell you we're a historically black college, take a guess, all right? They didn't put black colleges in white neighborhoods, okay? We're down near the bottom, firmly inside of one of those red areas, okay? That's our city. That's not right, okay? Let's be very, very clear. This didn't happen by accident. This didn't happen because all of a sudden all the black people said, let's live in all the poor parts of town, right? That's not what happened. And when you live in a city where there are lots of concerned people, but nobody's concerned enough to change that for a sustained period of time, you become angry, you become disillusioned, and you decide enough is enough, right? Enough is enough. Now, having this conversation doesn't make me racist. Having this conversation doesn't make me a jerk. Having this conversation makes me honest. Because what's done in the dark must be brought to the light if you ever hope to change it. Remember what I told you, struggle is not meant to be a permanent state, but you can't change your struggle if you don't call your struggle out. So we're going to speak about the struggle so that we can end the struggle. This isn't right, and this is what we are here to change. So our community, the community that Paul Quinn College is a member of, has a poverty problem. 88% of the people in that community are considered minorities. 84% of the members of that community have a high school diploma or less. 50% of the residents are unemployed, and the 49% that are employed, the majority of them make less than they make $30,000 a year. And up until last December, we didn't have a grocery store. Now, let's just go back and look at the map for a second. How many spaces north do you think don't have a grocery store? How many of those spaces you think live in a food desert? None. Or not enough that it registers on that map. Our community also has a quality of life problem. This is what passes as apartments in the neighborhood surrounding the college. And I want you to look at this because I want you to look at this and contrast to what Othello and those guys are doing here in Omaha, right? That is what Othello and 75 North are doing is extraordinary, right? It's absolutely extraordinary. And, and I just have to tell you from the days, he was nice enough to give us a tour yesterday, and it's exceptional, right? And it is the stuff that dreams are made of, right? It is. This is what nightmares are made of, okay? That is what people deserve. This is what no one should experience. And this is what we have come to change. But in this neighborhood, we're not all without economic engines, okay? In addition to the college, we have the prison, right? We have the prison. The neighborhood around the college exists in a quadrant, okay? There's two highways that intersect. One part of the quadrant is this, the prison. Next part of the quadrant is the garbage dump. Next part of the quadrant is the college. Next part of the quadrant are truck stops. That's neighborhood planning in the southern part of our city, okay? But here's some other businesses that you might be interested in. The pawn shop, which if I was better at clip art, you could see this was the pawn shop, okay? All right. I promise you, I did not mean to call out my friends Avalon here, okay? That was not the goal, right? It wasn't the goal. It was supposed to say pawn shop, okay? So you'll just have to take my word for it. It's a pawn shop, all right? But here's the thing. You either be part of the problem or you be part of the solution. So we decided to build an institution dedicated to solving people's problems, not talking about them. So we started with creating an institutional ethos. It's called We Over Me. The needs of a community must supersede the wants of an individual, period, right? Thank you. Thank you. We function with this ethos every single day. It drives every decision we make. We are guided by really three big principles, and this is the first. The second big principle, so our ethos, and then our values. We are a values-based organization. We believe in something called the 4 L's of Quinn leadership. We tell our students and we tell ourselves, we must always leave places better than you found them. That's an easy standard. Every time you interact with people, you should be able to answer the question, did you leave them better than you found them? Here's a simple way of gauging that. If people are happy to see you go, you failed, okay? You did not leave places better than you found them, all right? That is important. The second one is live a life that matters. When I was 13, I was a freshman in high school, I took a world history class, and they talked about Renaissance men. Okay, I went to a Jesuit high school, St. Ignatius in Chicago. And I thought at 13, which I can't explain to you why, it'd be kind of cool to be a Renaissance man. I'm going to be a Renaissance man. Not that I knew what that meant other than that maybe I was becoming a burgeoning egomaniac. But what I understood was you can't be a Renaissance man if you don't live a life that matters. And the way to matter is to serve. Right, is to serve, is to be someone that makes a difference in the lives of others. So we tell our students all the time, people are going to remember you. They're going to say something about you when you leave. Why don't you make sure they say things that are amazing about you? Live a life that matters. The third is lead from wherever you are. You don't have to be dubbed the leader to lead. You lead every single day, no matter what you do, in a million small interactions. If you can't be a great leader when things are small, how are you ever going to be a great leader when things are big? You have to practice leadership. You have to cultivate leadership within yourself. We challenge our students every minute of every day, lead, lead, lead. That way, when the clarion call comes, you will be prepared for your moment. Our fourth L is my favorite, which is love something greater than yourself. Find a cause. Find some worthy cause and devote your life to that. Find a way to live for something greater than just making money. My mother told me, she said, listen, there is no joy in poverty. My mother grew up poor in the rural South in a little town called Waterproof, Louisiana. Okay? Smallest parish, Tensas Parish in Louisiana. My father grew up in a single-parent home in New Orleans. My parents knew poverty, worked really hard to make sure that my sister and I never experienced it. But my mother told me, she said, listen, money cannot be your master, but it should definitely not be your enemy. Right? Find a happy medium, okay? We tell our students all the time about character, okay? Choose the harder right over the easier wrong without apparent regard for self-interest. Again, be selfless, okay? It's easy to make decisions in the bright lights of the day when everyone can see whether or not you stole something, whether or not you lied, whether or not you cheated. The mark of a true leader, of a truly centered individual, is what do you do when you can get away with the wrong decision, when there's no one looking? And do you make the more difficult choice then, when the shortcut is available to you? We tell them, don't be those people. Choose the harder right over the easier wrong. We tell our students, closed mouths don't get fed. Because here's the thing, when you grow up in under-resourced communities, you have been coached to be small. And you've been coached to be silent, and you've been coached to be embarrassed by your circumstances. It's not their fault, right? So we tell our students, speak up. Use your voice. You must no longer be the voiceless. You must no longer be the hopeless. Speak up. If there's an issue on campus, tell us. Put the onus on us to help improve your station. Choose to use your voice. Closed mouths don't get fed. And then, and this is particularly important, we tell our students, you can be my kind and not be my color, which is always a little odd at a historically black college. But, you know, here's the thing. 23% of our students are Hispanic now. 2% are Anglo. We know all three of them, right? You know, we tell people that HBCU now stands for Hispanic, Black, and Caucasian University. But the beauty of our school is we don't care what color you are. We care, do you share our values? And our values aren't black values, they're not white values, they're not Hispanic values, they are us values, right? They are we values. We don't even have targeted recruiting programs, right? We got to 23% Hispanic students just because we just recruited everyone the same way, and people liked not being belittled or dealing with condescension. I know what it's like to be recruited because you're black. I hated it. I hated the fact people came to me and said, oh, you know, we have this diversity program. Great, I wish you the best of luck. Get out of here, right? Because I don't define myself solely by my race. I know I'm black. I'm well aware of it. I've lived with it every day, right? I like it. It works for me, okay? But it is not all of who I am, right? It is a portion of who I am. So I'm not going to treat others the way I wish people had not treated me. That's our philosophy. And we have wonderful partners from all races and all colors. Right? And you know what? They are Quinnites because they care about leaving places better than they found them. They care about loving something greater than themselves. They care about we over me. That trumps everything in our world. So these, thank you. So these are our beliefs. We believe that poverty is evil. We believe debt is bad. The idea, this always amazes me. In higher education, we tell people the way out of poverty is debt. Come to our school, borrow lots of money, and that's going to get you out of poverty. How, in good conscience, do you tell people that? How do you tell people borrow more money than your family makes in a year? That's not right. It's not right. So, debt is bad, poverty is evil. We believe anyone can learn, and everyone can learn, right? It's just the challenge is, do you have the ability to teach them? Because if they're not learning, maybe it's not them. Maybe it's you. Find a way to connect with people. Meet people where they are and lift them to the places where their dreams should be. That is our challenge. And then we believe collectively we all can do better than we're doing right now. This is our formula. We preach hope. Because in under-resourced communities, hope is a precious commodity. People have betrayed those communities for years and years and years. And then they want to know why people don't believe anymore, why they don't have faith anymore. Because you taught them to be faithless by failing them time and time again. So we preach hope with a relentless passion. We practice patience, because if you have been down, it's going to take a minute for you to learn how to get up. And you're going to stumble sometimes, but our job is not to allow your stumbles to become a fall. So we are patient in the process of teaching people how to stand up. We instill resilience, because you cannot succeed in this life if you won't keep going. You must keep going. We were an institution, I tell people this story all the time. For my first 5 years of a college presidency, there was no reason to believe I'd get this right. In the first 2.5 years, we went from 550 students to 151 students. I inherited an accreditation crisis. So 2 months in, the accrediting body said, we don't like you anymore. Right? I didn't even know what the accrediting body was. We didn't talk about accreditation at Duke. Right? I mean, it was a whole different world. Nothing was going right. We cut the football program, right? Which, funny story about cutting the football program. We were terrible. Lost almost every game, right? And I say almost just because the football team asked me to stop saying they lost every game, okay? And so when we cut the football program, I will never forget this. I was up on a stage like this one, and I said to the football players, we're going to have to terminate the program, but we'll make sure you guys have a place to go to school, and anyone who has a 3.0 or better will honor your scholarship. The rest of you will find a place for you to go to school. And some of the football players got really, really angry, right? And so they rushed the stage. Now, here's the thing. I'm not little, right? So they come running up to me, and literally some of them I was like, listen, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, right? But if your college president is bigger than your offensive line, there's a problem, right? There's a problem here. So, but they're all wonderful people. We love them. Okay, we love them. So, but my point is, you have to keep going, right? We kept going, and we kept praying, all right, because that is critically important. We teach entrepreneurial thought and entrepreneurial action. Again, when you have no other way, when conventional wisdom has failed you, when the status quo has never worked for you, why do you keep going back? Right? Think of a different way. Try something new. You know what failure looks like. It's doing what everyone else did. So trust yourself enough to dream a different dream. Try something different. And then the last one is lead with love. And I think that's the most important. I got some advice. So I became a college president. I just turned 40. I had no idea what I was doing. I had never worked in education, a fact that my sister reminded me of often. She's a teacher in Chicago. In fact, I'll tell you a story. When I called her to tell her that I had been offered the presidency at Paul Quinn, you could kind of hear her in the background throw her hands up. And she's just like, of course you did. She said, why wouldn't you? She's like, you don't know anything. You've never taught. You're not a teacher. She's like, you know what you are? You are the Black Forrest Gump, right? She said, stuff just happens to you, right? So I'm a novice college president. I've got a school that is failing, and it's failing publicly. So if it fails, this is going to be on the front page of the paper. It's already on the front page of the paper. And I run into people in grocery stores, and they laugh at me, and they tell me we're going to fail. I see people on the treadmill who, I'm running on the treadmill, and they come over and they want to talk about how the school's not going to make it. And by the way, don't be those people, right? If you see people running on the treadmill or working out, there's an appropriate amount of time to carry on a conversation. It's really short, okay? It's, hey, how are you? I'll talk to you when you get done, right? That's the conversation. Not, hey, man, I read that article. I don't think you're going to make it. What's your strategy, right? My strategy is get out of here, right? So just a little, for those of you who didn't laugh, you are those people. Change, okay? Just change, all right? That's all I ask. But so I'm stressed out. It's incredibly difficult. I'm so afraid that I have this 135-year-old institution that has survived the aftershock of slavery, that has survived Jim Crow, that has survived every horror known to mankind, but it might not survive me as a president, right? And that is a frightening thought. And so every day I'm stressed out. So I get into a yelling match with a young male student on campus. And I don't even remember what it was about. It was probably about something really stupid, okay? But I didn't respond to him the right way. He came at me. Listen, I'm not going to back down, right? So I came back at him, right? And we're going at it, and there might have been some very unchristian words being said. I'm positive there were. And we're fighting all the way up the step. We get into my office, and he breaks down in tears. I have no idea what to do with this, because 10 seconds ago, you were MFing me and this and that, and you break down in tears. And I'm wholly unprepared for that. I could not make the shift fast enough. Thankfully, I had a staff member with me, and she was a quintessential Southern matriarch. And she comforts him, she gets him out of the office, she comes back in and she sits down and she kind of shakes her head and she says, baby, I know you love him, but you're tough on him. He said, now, I met your mother, and your mother was tough on you, but your mother loved you. You have never spent 1 second of your life wondering if you were loved. She said, one could argue you might have been overloved. And I'm like, that was a shot fired, right? Like, I'm not really sure what you're trying to say, but I know that's not a compliment, okay? And she said, if you want them to hear you, if you want them to understand you, if you want them to follow you, you have to lead with love. Let them know you love them, and they will follow you. Changed my entire presidency at that moment in time. First of all, I was smart enough to realize how stupid I was, okay? I was humble enough to listen, and she was right. If you have students whose lives are difficult, who have a deficit of love, how about we give them a surplus of love? So now, thank you. So now at Paul Quinn, it's not uncommon for people to hear us say how much we love our students, right? Where I say, I love you. Where the students will say, we love you too, Prez. This is who we are. We hug our students, and not in the creepy way, like the preacher hug, right? Like, I love you, right? But the point is, we freely express that. And we don't think there's anything wrong with that. In fact, we think it's part of what makes us so strong, because our students don't have to question whether or not they're in a place that has their best interest at heart. And I would argue, in the communities we serve, they'd be a lot better off if people led from a position of love and a position of assets than a position of deficits, and reminding people how hard their lives are and what they don't have. So we start there at the Quinnite Nation. Next up is our new model. We turned the institution outward and responded to the needs of the communities we serve. We embrace experiential learning, and we think and act entrepreneurially. So here's what that translates into. We had a football team, as I told you. We cut the football team, but we still had a football field. And we had a bank early on that told us that our campus was worthless, that there was no value in 144 acres of land that was paid for 10 minutes from downtown Dallas. Because we're Boo-Boo the Fool, okay? All right? That is the other thing you have to understand. People assume because you are there devoting your time and your talents to people who may not have, that you don't have, right? It can't be because you made a decision. It has to be because they wouldn't have made the decision you made, so you must not have had the options that they had. That's what that person assumed of us. So we thought, you know what? We're going to show you what worthless looks like, right? And so we thought, we're in a food desert. Our community needs a grocery store. So we started trying to get a grocery store. I naively thought it would be easy to get a grocery store because I thought, look, you don't have one. There are thousands of people who live here, so you have a customer base. I played Monopoly. That's a Monopoly-like conditions. Apparently, I played the wrong Monopoly game, right? So nobody would help us. We even offered to give free land. We said, we have 144 acres. We will give you rent-free the land necessary to open a grocery store if you agree to hire people from this community. And nobody called, right? So one day, and this just goes to show you how the Lord works, we were at low tide. I mean, it was as dark as it had ever been. It was fall 2009. We couldn't even open school on time because we didn't have enough students. Now, we told people part of the problem was we didn't have air conditioning in the dorm and in the student union. That part was true. The part we just didn't tell people was we just didn't have enough students, even if we had had the air conditioning. So we had to go find students, right? Literally, it was August, September. We had to go find students to be able to hold school. And during one of those days, I came back from lunch, and I mean, I was depressed, right? It was hard. And my assistant says, you had a phone call from Trammell Crow. Now, I didn't know Trammell Crow, so I thought it was a prank. I thought one of my friends was being a jerk. Because let's be honest, we all have some jerk friends, right? We have one or two, right? We keep them around because they make us feel better about ourselves, okay? But we all have those friends. And so I called back thinking that this is going to be one of my friends, and it turns out it's legitimately Trammell S. Crow. And he says, listen, I've been reading about what you're doing in the paper, and I'd like to go to lunch with you. I was like, man, I will always eat. So we go to lunch, and we're talking, and we hit it off. And I recognized, I had gotten some advice from Gerald Turner, who's the president at Southern Methodist University there in Dallas, and just a prolific fundraiser, and I asked him for some advice about fundraising. And he said, when you are with people of means, ask them for something. Get people in the habit of thinking of your institution as something they should support financially. So this is, it was a couple weeks ago, so I thought I'd take it out for a spin. So I'm sitting there with Trammell. I was like, Trammell, the people in our neighborhood need a grocery store. And, I'm working my way up to asking him for a grocery store. And Trammell, without missing a beat, says, you know what I'm really passionate about? Our community gardens. Now, I don't claim to be a genius, but I'm not a dumb man. I recognize immediately we're not getting a grocery store, right? So, that part was pretty clear, okay? So I realized that, and I said, Trammell, I have recently become fascinated by community gardens myself. Right? We don't lie. It's all in the phrasing, okay? It's all in the phrasing. So he said, listen, do you have some place that you could put a grocery store? If you have some place that you could put a community garden? I said, we do. We can put it on the football field, right? He says, that's kind of interesting. I said, well, listen, if we're going to do one here, could we have the money to do one at a church across the street? Because one of the mistakes people make is they don't think about someone other than themselves. We think, again, it's a little pie, and if I've got mine, that's all I can be concerned with. And we just think you have to be an advocate for everybody. And so he agreed to provide that. And in the process of doing so, he was telling some people, because it's kind of an interesting story. You're going to put a community garden on a football field. So he tells the people from Pepsi. The people from Pepsi come down to visit, and we're sitting in my office, and I'm sort of like, hey, you know what we should do? We should turn the whole football field into a farm. And they're like, you can do that? I was like, yeah, I'm the president. We can do whatever we want to do, right? Right? And they said, well, do you have an agriculture program? Do you have someone to run the farm? I said, I'll be right back. Right? I run out of the office to the desk of my assistant, and I call Elizabeth Watley, who works now at City Square. And Elizabeth was my youngest staff member, and she's also the most optimistic and the most can-do attitude. So I said, Elizabeth, you majored in economics at Spelman, right? And she said, yes. I said, great, you're going to run the farm. Right? And she says, what farm? I was like, we're about to have a farm. And she said, I don't know anything about farming. I was like, I don't care about that. Just Google it. Just figure it out, right? So literally, that's how it started. If she was here, she would tell you the story. This is the God's honest truth. She Googled what grows in Dallas. That is how our farm started, okay? That's how the farm started. And listen, it was the dumbest thing ever. It should never have worked, okay? This is how you wind up with a farm with no real irrigation system. Okay, we used to stand there with the hoses like, right? Like the crops were growing like this, right? I mean, it was hard times, okay? But here's the thing, we were filled with righteous rage and we were unafraid to fail. Right? Because if we failed, what was going to happen? People still weren't going to have food. But if we succeeded, maybe something great can happen. And something interesting happens when you're unafraid of failing. People help you, right? It starts with the Lord, because, you know, he loves children and fools, and we were too old to be children. But people support you, and they rally to your causes when your heart is true. And that's what we've tried to do. And so now we have expanded from the farm to a farmer's market as well. We've grown somewhere around 50 or 60,000 pounds of food during the time that we've had the farm. We give away 10% of what we grow. We call it tithing to the community. Our largest customer are the Dallas Cowboys. Listen, at this point, we've sent more kale to the NFL than players, okay? And it has served as a source of pride to our community and a rallying point, because it should have never worked, right? It should have never worked. And the fact that it did work serves as inspiration of what's possible if you try, right? And we're proud of that. Now, we looked around and we realized that our students were taking on way too much debt. And because we talked to our students, we understood the pressure and the stress that trying to come up with money to pay for school was causing. And when you know your students, when you know your people, you are impacted by their struggle. So we realized we don't have to just sit here and do nothing. We have the power to change. Let's change and create a different model. So we've become the first urban work college in the history of the United States. And here's what that means. No, thank you. So here's what that means. All of our residential students are required to work between 10 and 16 hours per week. What makes us special, most work colleges, and there are 8 other work colleges in the country, but they're all in rural locations. And their students all work on farms, they work on campus, they work pottery, they do all those types of things. Well, our demographic's a different demographic. It's hard to take kids from the south side of Chicago or from inner city Oakland or Minneapolis, St. Paul, and say to them, we've got a deal for you. You're going to spend 4 years farming. That's not going to sell. But what will sell is using the resources of our city to assist our students. So at Paul Quinn, our students strive to work off campus in the corporate work program, where they work in careers closely related to what they study. They work in corporate offices, nonprofits, and those institutions, those businesses, help pay for the students. So the way our financial model works, and let me show you here. So we used to charge $23,875. We cut that by almost $10,000 originally, and now we've raised it a little bit to $14,495, but that's it. The total cost of attendance at Paul Quinn is $14,495. That's room, board, tuition fees, everything, okay? And this is how students pay for it. The Pell Grant covers $5,900, and remember, close to 90% of our students are Pell Grant eligible, so they start out with that. The work program credit gives them $5,000. So right out of the gate, almost $11,000 is covered without ever having to take out a student loan, right? You show up, $11,000 of your tuition is covered. The average student receives another $1,200 either in SEOG grants, tuition equalization grants from the state, or institutional funds. So that means that the average student only needs to borrow $2,375 a year, which allows them to graduate, if they choose to, with less than $10,000 of student loan debt over the course of 4 years. The average college student in this country graduates with $37,000 of student loan debt. We have just given them back a significant portion of their life. So this is Paul Quinn now. Now remember where we started. We were about to close. We've had 10 consecutive unqualified audits. The last, now this is right, 6 or 7 figure surpluses in 8 of the last 10 years. We've raised $20 million in private contributions in the last 5 years, $4.4 million alone in 2016, 2017. Our enrollment is up almost 250% since the spring of 2010. We have been the subject of feature stories in the New York Times, the Atlantic, the Wall Street Journal, HBO, ESPN, NPR, Sports Illustrated. We get more sports coverage now for cutting the football team than we did having the football team, okay? We have formed partnerships with Yale University, the University of Pennsylvania. In fact, Yale was our mentor on starting the farm. The University of Pennsylvania worked with us to create a major in fundraising and philanthropy because we realized there weren't enough fundraisers and development officers of color and that this was a growth industry, all right? Duke University, my alma mater, we did, this is kind of cool, we did a partnership where 7 Duke students and 8 Paul Quinn students went to school together for a semester. They lived part of the semester on Duke's campus, part of the semester on Paul Quinn's campus. After that, everybody had to go to therapy for a year. But it was an amazing program where we studied social justice and environmental justice. It was fantastic. Oberlin College, we partnered with Oberlin to create an opportunity for our students to study abroad. For the first time in our history, we sent students to Europe last year. They went to Amsterdam. We followed that up this summer with students who went to Berlin, Hong Kong, and England. And 2 weeks ago, we just wrapped up a program where 50 students got passports for free, their very first passport, because we want to open up, again, the possibilities of being more than what you came to us as what you were, pardon that. Partnerships with SMU, with Abilene Christian, which, by the way, Abilene Christian is amazing. If you haven't had an opportunity to really learn about that institution, they are doing some special things, and we are thrilled to partner with them. And then UT Southwestern partnered with us. The first year we started recruiting students from Chicago, I went and recruited all those students myself. And we went into some of the most difficult high schools in the city. There wasn't a high school I went into that year where students hadn't experienced some type of shooting or death by gun violence at that school. We thought, oh, this will be great. We'll bring students down, they'll be in safe places, their life will be better. We did not account for the trauma that comes with living under the specter of death every day. So our students were depressed. They were traumatized. They had post-traumatic stress disorder. They weren't mentally healthy. So we formed a partnership with UT Southwestern, which was willing to provide mental health care for our students so that they could have an opportunity to access a better life. And I'm so thankful for them for doing so. It has changed many, many lives on our campus. This is also our now. We have a brand new soccer field. Just opened it up. We opened soccer a couple years ago. And this is about thinking and acting entrepreneurially. When our students come to us and say, why don't we have something? We say, because you haven't created it yet. One of our students said, why don't we have a soccer team? Because you haven't created it yet. So I challenged him. I said, you go out and create a soccer program. You run it for a year, and I will fund it after that. And he did that. So we named the soccer field after him, right? So it's the Geo Messiah soccer field. Now, that being said, there is still a wonderful naming rights opportunity for any of you out there. Okay? All right? We are fine with tagging this on. We can make something. We are creative. If you have learned nothing else today, you know we are creative. So these are our reviews. This is what people are saying about us. President Bill Clinton came to visit the campus a couple years ago. And, you know, people can be a little bit dismissive. So a reporter asked him, said, why in the world are you here at Paul Quinn College? And he said, because Paul Quinn works the way we think America should work. That was a drop the microphone moment. You will see this quote for the rest of our lives, okay? I promise you, any speech I give, Bill Clinton said, we work the way America should work. The New York Times called us an emerging national and community leader. And the person who I think is the best college president in the country, Freeman Harbowski, said that we took a small college and turned it into a big idea. So this is our next. We're out of space on campus. We've got to build new facilities. We've got 100 students living off campus in the apartments that you saw, by the way, because there's no place else for them to live, all right, which is a travesty. So we're going to have to deal with that ourselves. We're going to establish a national network of urban work colleges. So we are now out looking at different sites in different cities around the country to begin opening extension campuses with this same value system, with this same belief in addressing the issues of inner city communities. And we want to do a community campus redevelopment plan that we call Building a City for Our Quinnite Nation. And that is where this is our next. We're going to partner with City Square, with purpose-built communities, and we're going to build that neighborhood that people can dream of. So we are inspired by the work, but we think it's time to bring a purpose-built community to Dallas, Texas, because Dallas needs that. So we are thrilled about that. And this is our why. This is Asia Morrell. She's one of our freshmen. Look at the look on her face. It is filled with hope. It is filled with expectation. It's because she understands that her next is going to be better than her now. And she's willing to work hard for that. We get up every day and we fight for Asians in this world. Now, back to your homework assignment, okay? Who wants to go first? What do you have for me?
You have done an awesome job.
Oh,
Total awesome job.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So this is a great vision statement. My only suggestion would be, instead of work, careers, employment, through the power of marketplace participation.
I like that. Chris, make sure you write that down. All right. All right. That's going to be a hard one to beat. Anyone else? That doesn't mean you don't try. Lifestyle mapping. All right, now we've got some momentum going. Lifestyle mapping. Social enterprise. All right? This is good. The people. Through the power of the people. I like this. I feel like we're going to church now. All right. Global. Tying into the mission statement. Look at you. You're going to get an extra credit point. What else do we have? Yes, ma'am. The power of purpose. I'm coming to you guys with more homework, all right? This is great. Power of purpose. Anything else? Chris, make sure you got that one down, okay? So just add loving in between transformative and leaders. All right, the more, like, this is getting good. What else do we have? All right, well, let me just say, first of all, thank you for the work you do. Thank you for getting up every day and believing that you can make a difference, because you are. You know, there's this great commercial by Apple that talks about how here's to the crazy ones, right? Because those who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones that do. So I am proud to join your band of crazies. I think it's amazing what you do, and thank you for the honor of your attention, and thank you for welcoming me as a colleague. Take care.